Today I got an S4 on the lift, 3-liter supercharged. We've got a popping noise when turning, sometimes when hitting bumps, and I've already dug into it a little bit. I pulled this rear brace off underneath the transmission. It was missing, it had recent work. It was missing this bolt and this bolt. Some local shop worked on it recently. This nut was in here, but this nut was not. And like I said, both of those bolts were missing. So that's the first, in my mind, that's one of the first things I like to bring the obvious back to normal. But the other thing that's what I like to scrutinize is apparently this whole thing came down. This whole subframe, engine, everything came down to get some performance exhaust up in there. So what I was instantly looking at was these mounting bolts that you have to take things down with. So you see, I've talked about this before. I like to harp on this, the witness marks. And you see how this isn't very far off right here, but see how that's off right there? And the transmission mount doesn't matter as much, but where it really starts to matter is when you get up into here in this main subframe and these bolts up there. You see how much shiny material is up there on that carrier, and it's on the inside right here. So then we'll come over to this side and the shiny material is on the outside, and you see how there's so much more right here. So this whole subframe is shifted this way. That makes a big difference with your alignment, because whenever the subframe holds these control arms, so whenever the subframe gets shifted this way, the control arm gets shifted this way, and then this wheel gets cambered out and that wheel gets cambered in, because everything else is not getting shifted. This is how you set your cross camber. There's no other way on this car unless you buy aftermarket upper links. So anytime you take your subframe down, you always want to put the bolts right back where you found them. And if you don't have good witness marks or you're worried about it, shoot a little bit of spray paint before you take it down. You can also look on the body right here, but it's not near as accurate as looking at the bolts, because this imprints on the soft aluminum with the steel bolts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take all these with this popping noise. I'm just gonna, apparently it wasn't there until the work was done. So I'm gonna take down all these bolts, and then I'm gonna shift it with the pry bar, and then I'm gonna tighten it back up where it was. Another thing I noticed was these support bars are gone. They're no longer here. Right here, there was supposed to be a bar right here. There's some clips in the inner fender liner that are missing. There's some nuts right up here that hold the inner fender liner. Those are missing. You know, I hadn't really, actually one of the biggest things was I found a connector that was disconnected up in here, and I probably should have filmed all this, but this connector was disconnected, and then that oxygen sensor was connected to this side, and then this oxygen sensor was disconnected. So what I had to do was I had to plug this one in and then plug this one in correctly. So did I get that right? One of them, this one was plugged in, but to the driver's side, and the passenger side was not plugged in. So I had to plug them in correctly. All right, so let's get these bolts loosened and tightened, and hopefully the popping goes away with just that. And plus, we're gonna add the hardware back in this subframe right here, because there could possibly be enough shift to create a type of noise. I doubt it, and then I'm gonna look at some of the other stuff. So I'm starting to loosen some of these bolts. I've got these loose. There was one up in here that I was getting ready to get loose, but then I noticed this level sensor is pulled out of its socket, and that's gonna be pretty typical of some of these. And they can get rusty, and this ball will not wanna move anymore. And you can see right here, see how they just get rusty and crusty, and the ball gets rust in it, and so I sprayed oil on the rest of them. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could probably be very careful and put anti-seize in them and pop them back in or something, but really just spray some oil on them every once in a while. So there was a right up in here, one of my last bolts. They're way up. So I'm just getting it loose enough, all of them. Same with over here, so we'll just all right, my impact is on like, still not all that familiar with this impact. I don't like how it surges. Maybe that was just the setting I was in. Okay, so if you'll come around this way, I've got all the bolts loose. Now I'm gonna take my pry bar and like I said, the front is the most crucial. So let me grab it right here. I'll show you this bolt right up in here, and you see all the shiny material on the right of that bolt. So the subframe needs to move to the left. See how there's so much more material over here? So I'm gonna start over here. I'm gonna flip the pry bar this way, and then I'm gonna see how close I can get it just the way it sits. So I might have to get a bigger pry bar. Yep. So I can get it over, but it really needs to come a little bit forward too, and that's going to be pretty tricky to come forward with it. So it's aluminum subframe, and the engine's very heavy, and it's a lot of mass to shift, especially with one person, and then tighten at the same time. So not only do I have a pedestal screw jack, I also have the engine lightly supported by my overhead engine support beam. So you can support it both ways. You can take a little bit more of the slack off like this to control it. You could put it where you need to with the pry bar. And then you see I have the bolts evenly spaced now, right back in their factory witness marks. I did these back ones as well. You just kind of, and you see there's a few marks right here. I just took my hammer and had to push this one back a little bit and make sure that everything was lined up perfect. Sometimes you don't have anything to pry against, and you just kind of have to push things into place.